So Rudy asked me if I'd come and just kind of share a bit of my grace walk and some of the things that I've encountered and kind of a bit of my testimony. So, I when I think of my grace journey, I think it's probably no different than a lot of people's. I grew up in a Christian home. I attended a Christian school, and I even joined a controlling religious sect in my teenage years. However, I did make it a point not to study any theology. I wasn't interested in God. Uh, it just wasn't on my radar. Um, to make that point clear, to be honest, I actually you could have asked me, the difference between the old and new covenant, and regardless of all my Christian upbringing, I couldn't have told you the difference, right? God to me was more of an institution as opposed to a relationship. So. I mean, that's not to say I wouldn't pray for God, but I didn't even know if I believed he existed. And if he did, I was pretty sure I was going to hell. That's just kind of where it's at. During my teen years, early 20s, I would dabble. I mean, some people dabble in sports, some people dabble in music. I dabbled in Christianity. Basically, keep one foot in the door so that you don't go to hell. That was kind of my ideology, right? Maybe if I'm good enough, I might find myself in heaven someday, or purgatory. Heck, I didn't know, right? So anyway, I found my identity primarily in relationships, romantic and other, and I'd say, okay, God, I'll come to know you. I'll accept you. Blah blah blah. All the Christian jargon that we so normally do. And unfortunately, I'd find myself going out and screwing up the very next second. And right then, I thought, you know what? I'm not saved, right? Obviously, I'm not saved. So to the pit fire of hell I go. I got really, really sick and tired of this. Eventually, I found myself trying to find ways to force myself into good behavior, right? I wanted God, or rather, I didn't want God. I wanted to be godlike, or whatever the Christian method went, right? I mean, the fires of hell. I got to tell you, it's a scary thing when you're a young kid, right? When you're being told, when you're caught reading a Mad comic, for example, and you're being told that if Christ came back right now, right this minute, you're probably going to hell, right? When your Catholic grandmother is sitting there saying, you're not baptized, you might make it to purgatory, I don't know. It's a scary thing. And so I joined a Christian sect, and sect is probably a very generous, kind word for what I joined. I moved about 14 hours away, and I found myself in the midst of leaders that really wanted to work to break our will. So for the next few months, I had demons cast out of me every day. We were forced to go on strenuous mountain hikes. Told that when we got there'd be food. Instead, we were forced to run around, collect the chickens that they would let loose, given jackknives, and told to slit their throats, and feed them that way. We did love ceremonies where we were trying to force the love out of our body into other people. Just whacked out, crazy stuff that I was being told was Christianity. So I actually got to a point where I couldn't do it any longer, and I was feeling way worse than when I joined. So I actually went to the group leader and I lied. I told him, I said, you know what? I need to go up on this hill. I need to go reflect on God, and then after that, I'll come back. What I really did is I went up on the hill and I jogged 3 kilometers down and found myself a payphone in the middle of town and called my dad and said, please get me the heck out of here. So, after that, I kind of stayed away from Christianity for quite some time. Admittedly, I was still scared of going to hell, but, if this is what God was, I wanted no part of it. Anyway, a few years later, I found myself taking a degree in education, and a lot of the electives I chose were in anthropology. And now I've come to, you can definitely be you can definitely believe in God and believe in evolution. I don't. I'm a creationist, but for me at the time, I didn't know you could. And for me, this was an excuse that God didn't exist. So there started another leg of the journey. So I was actually I started researching. I was reading anybody that I could that would convince me that God absolutely did not exist. And as a result, I was pretty happy about it, to be honest. Right? This weird, chaotic God that I had envisioned and encountered, if he didn't exist, then I was going to be okay. So I really embraced it, and I went on this for a little bit, a couple of years. I'd say it was a couple of years later, that I was kind of a very happy, at least agnostic, if not bordering on atheist, that I realized I really hated Christianity and Christians altogether. I despised them, right? If Satan was sitting right about here, Christians were sitting right about here. I mean, I loathed them. And I came across, and I'm not sure how, on my Facebook page, this evangelical pastor. And his name's Mark Gungor. For anybody, I don't know if you've heard of his seminars, but I was just so angry about a teaching he had, and I just threw a little comment out there, and then I wrote him because I was just angry. I just hated this man. Well, anyway, turns out he had, I don't know, 70 or 80,000 subscribers, and he had a radio show that I didn't know about. And he decided to feature me on air. So he called me out and gave me kind of a whipping on air. And somehow his words hit home, which is just bizarre because they were pretty mean words, but they hit home. And I realized at that moment that God really did exist. He said some things that he knew nothing about me, and he said some things that really hit. And it didn't matter that I had spent all this time studying and researching and trying to prove to myself that God was just a human invention. I couldn't deny it. It just inside my heart, I knew that Christ existed. So I decided that I would start my Christian journey. It was within that time frame that I came home, and I told my wife at the time how excited I was that I was a Christian. And she basically said, "Wow, this is terrible." So from that point on, I had a bit of a struggle. Within that year, I lost my wife to another man. I had my kids at first, but I also lost my job. I had childcare issues, and basically had to send my children to then go live with their mom. The job that I had, the company I worked for, lost an $8 million contract, which is why a few of us kind of lost our job and our paychecks. And I decided I was going to try and restart somewhere else. I had a terrible time lining up a job. I don't know why, but I just did. And I found myself virtually homeless, living out of my aunt's basement with a suitcase in the back of my car. Not a fun position to be in. And I sunk into a massive depression and basically, raised my fist at God and said, "You're a jerk. Why on earth you're worse than what I thought you were when I was a child. You're absolutely worse. You're terrible. You're an ogre." Well, later on, a friend of mine that from my non-Christian days, she was an ex-drug dealer. She found me and nagged at me for a long time to come to her church, come to her church, come to her church. Well, for me, that's the only place I knew that God even existed. So at that point, I finally gave in to her just to kind of, whatever. But I was so depressed, and she was so convinced. She was one of those good old word of faithers, that, and she was so convinced that God was going to meet me there. I didn't know any better, and thank God that God is gracious. Because once again, he came down and met me on my level. I didn't have to go to him, but he met me on my level. And I said, "God," I said, I'm going to give you one chance. If you can reach me tonight, just reach me tonight. I'll cave. I'll submit to whatever you want. I mean, I knew nothing. I really came in there basically knowing that God existed. That night, as the worship music started to play, I closed my eyes, and I mean, I'm not a word of faither, but boy, do I love some of them. They were going around, things were happening in each corner of the room. There was a lot of ruckus, a lot of stuff going on, and I didn't know what's real and what's not. And I just said, God, I don't care. You can kill me, or you can zap me, or whatever. Well, none of that really happened, except that this amazing peace and love just kind of enveloped all around me. And I remember just closing my eyes and swaying to the music, and it just felt for the first time that Father God had just reached down and had just wrapped me up, in the arms of the cross in His love, and I just felt at peace. And once again, there was nothing intellectual that happened, but once again, I just knew that not only did God exist, He loved me. And to be honest, unknown to me at the time, this was really God just bestowing His grace upon me. So if you fast forward a couple of years later in time, you'd find me a church member. I was certain of God's existence. I had remarried the love of my life, this amazing woman back here. I had gained 3 more children. My daughters, one was living full-time with me. Things were going well. I was a youth pastor. I was a small group leader. I played on the worship team. And I couldn't help but notice, though, that in this church I was in, Christ still seemed to be missing. There was a lot of major messages most Sundays, and a lot of it was, build this church into a mega church. Go forth and do as I tell you to do. A lot of it was on tithing. So, I remember hearing, for God so loved the world that He gave ... so you had better give your tithe too. I knew something was missing. It's about that time that I contacted a friend of mine, and he introduced me to a copy of Andrew Farley's God Without Religion. Now, if you haven't heard of this book, it's an amazing book. It'll really give you a solid grounding in grace doctrine and whatnot. I was quite naive, and I went around and I started sharing this with my friend the pastor, some of the people at my church. Within a week, my wife and I were kicked out of the church. We were shunned. We to this day, I can cross these people on the sidewalk and they put their heads down. I can say hello. They give me the finger. I mean, that's just how it works, right? It's not, they don't give me the finger, but pretty much same thing. It doesn't go so well.
They give you the Christian finger.
They give me the Christian finger. That's right. That cross you. So yeah, that's exactly it. I was relieved of my duties, and we were kicked out. We lost friends, and it was quite sad. The thing was, it didn't hit me the same time as hard because we'd found grace. And along this grace walk, I have really found that God's love is it's more gigantic than you'll ever know. It's amazing. For example, let me just back up here. I like I say, I made notes and I kind of went off on a rabbit trail there. But Richard Dawkins. I'm sure, have you all heard of Richard Dawkins? We would like to eradicate religion from the earth. I'd like to eradicate religion from the earth. So I'd say that maybe he's on a good page. We're just going about it in different directions. But Richard Dawkins states in The God Delusion, the God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Jealous and proud of it, a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, let's hope I say these words right, filicidal, pestilential, maniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully. God, in the sense defined, is a delusion. I couldn't agree with Dawkins' viewpoint anymore. I mean, it's true. Without an understanding of grace and who God really is, this view of God is exactly what religion has made God out to be. If Christians don't know any better, why should someone like Dawkins? Today we've got many believers that can't see that Jesus' work is finished. Many are trying to complete something that has already been completed. And yet, Jesus' work is finished. Mainstream religious Christianity has turned God into an ogre, a bully, a psychopath. In this stream of Christianity, God makes Hannibal Lecter appear cute and cuddly. God's joy? Roasting us at the stake and pointing his finger. The fruit of the Spirit has become condemnation, violence, fear, retribution. We've been taught that we must strive for even a morsel from God's cupboard. Work, law, and strive, strive, strive. Try to measure up. Happiness is a sin. We hear this everywhere. The truth is that what I've learned on my grace walk is that God just wants us to stop this. He wants us to really, truly stop and rest in him. He wants us to just stop trying to, measure up on our own, and he wants us to start resting and trusting in his grace. So please just believe that the work is done. We have nothing left to do. Let's just rejoice in him, in his undeserved favor. And that's what I've really learned. So anyway, I think we're passing it over here. So, all right.